Hey guys, Matt here with my friend Reti. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different and a little bit more informal than our usual stuff. We're going to be talking about the movies How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2. The reason for that is, well, my primary reason anyway, is that I've been hyped to see Incredibles 2, which just came out, and I'm going to be seeing that soon. And I've been catching up on a lot of acclaimed animated features over the years that I've missed, and I've rewatched some of the old classics as well. But yeah, How to Train Your Dragon is something that I just found, and it's an old favorite of Callan's, right?
Yep, definitely. Particularly of these
And
later years, I've been rewatching them a lot.
yeah, right. And so once we both realized, or once we realized that we had a mutual interest, we decided that we would cover them. And this is a full spoiler discussion. We're going to be talking in depth about the films, but not with like a notepad or like not with Fanalysis mode on. This is just like a light discussion between friends because some of you guys in the comments have been asking for that, like what our lengthy discussions are like outside of our usual format. So how do we want to start here?
Well, let's lead in with how we were introduced to the series, or the two films, I guess, primarily, because there are TV series surrounding these, of which I've seen certain clips.
Oh, that's true.
But
Yeah, that's right.
I've judging by the quality of what I have seen, I think it's pretty good. But I'm not really familiar with that material. So focusing on the two films to start with, how were you introduced to them?
So for me, I do not recall what movie I went to go see, but many years ago, I went to the movies with my dad, my sisters, some other folks. And I remember walking past like, cardboard cutout, of promotional like material like for the first How to Train Your Dragon movie. I mean, and DreamWorks has made, however many like famous thing like Shrek, Puss in Boots, like all these things, right? I don't even remember what year this came out. Do you? 2008, you said?
2010.
2010. Okay. Yeah, but I just remember, and like my dad is like a fan of like animation. He like never outgrew cartoons. He never got too old for them. But like, having said that, he only likes like good ones. You know what I mean? So I've grown up in a house where it wasn't unusual for like the whole family, kids and adults to be watching the cartoons together or animated features together. But for whatever reason, none of us had any interest in this movie at all. Like just like looking at it, it just looked like, all right, whatever. And when did Kung Fu Panda come out? Was that
Oh, now
2000?
you're asking. I don't know.
Because that's
It's
another really good one.
yeah, around the same time, and that was another one where I think that was probably sooner actually, 2008, 2007. Not sure.
I think
But
that one came out first.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but that was another one I looked at and thought, nope. I mean, that's just going to be
Right.
terrible, obviously, and
Yeah.
then turned out
Yeah.
to very much not be.
Exactly.
Which is the same with How to Train Your Dragon. I'm similar to you. I went into various films as the promotional art was out on display, and just well, that's going to be terrible, and walk straight past it. And it's a lesson that we should have learnt by now. But I feel like
Right.
I'll probably do
Yeah,
exactly the
absolutely.
same thing with many more animated films to come, because
Yeah.
it is so often the case where it's almost down to the fact that they don't promote themselves properly.
Yeah,
A
I
lot.
agree
We
with
we
that.
spoke about Coco recently. How you've recently
Coco.
rewatched it.
Yeah.
Not well, watched
Yeah.
it for the first time rather. Much later than after it had already come out, and we both of us looked at the trailers and thought this is going to be terrible, because it
Right.
does, even looking at them after you've seen it, you think, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not surprised I didn't go and watch it, because it has nothing to do with the actual
Yeah.
quality of the film.
In Coco's case, and by the way, like I'm insisting on this, we're going to be talking about Coco one
Oh,
of these
yeah.
days, guys,
Yeah.
just in case any
We're-
of you want to see that.
We're
But,
gonna do full analyses on pretty much all of these that we're mentioning at the moment. It's just going to be
Yeah.
a bit later on, so we wanted to get this out of the way while we're in the mood.
yeah, I mean, I've been in a very, like Pixar intensive, mode. Of course, How to Train Your Dragons is DreamWorks, of course, but with Incredibles 2 coming out, I've been on the hype train. And that's exactly why I revisited this movie, once I realized I just gave up on it, or I never gave it a chance, rather. The same as Coco. I'm almost positive that Coco has like a horrible Coldplay song going on in the background, which doesn't fit the themes, the message of the movie, the characters, even the culture that's highlighted at all. Like it's the antithesis of the movie. But yeah, they come out with like just these bland ass trailers that make me go, don't care, whatever. I'm not going to see that. Years go by, in this case like 8 years, and like about 2 months ago on my HBO app, I just saw that they had the first How to Train Your Dragon movie. And it's funny because like my dad, he called me just to say hi one day, as he does. I talk with him probably like once, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, I would guess, for a couple hours over the phone. And with my dad's hobby primarily is that he like collects movies and old shows and TV. Like he has like he has a collection so big he's had to like catalog it. Like it's like a library of like movies.
Yeah.
But he had finally gotten around to this, and he recommended it to me. He goes, "Yeah, I got to eat my words on that. I remember not being interested in that." I go, "Yeah, I wasn't either." He goes, "Yeah, it's really good." I go, "Really? Really? Like, it's that good?" And he goes, "Yeah, like, it's just super emotional, really good stuff, like, super creative." And I thought, all right, I don't really see it. And so, like, I let another year go by until I saw it on my app, and I go, all right, I'll try it. Let's see if the old man knows what he's talking about. And I loved it. And then I realized that you loved it. But how did you get started with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember you mentioning me. You messaged shortly after having watched it and go, "Oh, guys, this is so good!" And then Connor and I both jumped back, saying, "Yes, it is. It's brilliant. We love it." Because I'd been, I too missed it from this in the cinemas and when it came out on film. I watched it on. I think I was house sitting a friend's house at the time, and I just basically had the opportunity.
See it in theaters either.
Yeah, didn't see the first one in theaters. Had the opportunity to see it on DVD or Blu-ray at that point, I suppose, and loved it myself. This was like 4 years after it came out, so much sooner than you, but still way later than the rest of the world.
Yeah,
it was just prior to the second one coming out, basically, because I'd seen that a lot of people were excited to go and watch that. And I thought, oh well, it's obviously done well for itself, so let's see if it deserves the hype. And basically, jumped on that train immediately because the first one is so very good. And then I got to see the second in films in the cinema, which I did twice, which is a very rare occurrence for me. I very rarely watch the same thing twice in the cinema. And my window
you're right?
Yep. Bear with, carry on.
Okay. I mean, I've processed both films like in the last 2 months. I just saw the second one for the first time, I think, day before yesterday. It's great. But we'll get into whether or not like I prefer, like we'll talk about like which film we both prefer here as we go through this discussion. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how we want to continue this. Do we want to talk about characters
just general thoughts on the series? I mean, what we like about
general
kind of the setting, I guess, because it is quite a not an expansive world that they've built. It's very
well, it's quite well fleshed out.
Yeah. It's got a lot of little details that they didn't really have to do that kind of stand out for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good place to start. It's just the world itself, like the kingdom, like what do we call it? Like,
yeah, well, that's
village,
why I
whatever?
wouldn't call it massively developed. It's kept very loose, which I think is one of the strengths of the film. It doesn't need to kind of go into nitty gritty world building on a kind of setting level. It just says this is Burke, this is a village, and it is in a world in which there are other areas similar and different to it. And we get to explore those through the mechanics or story mechanics of the dragons, obviously, in whatever pace they choose to give us.
I think that this is true of both films. Actually, they have like very strong opening scenes. And in the case of the first one, and this gets into like immediately the character of Hiccup, and it's interesting because it's similar to Coco. Like it kind of starts with like the main character narrating sort of what's going on and like what the setting is like and what the situation at the moment is, and kind of introducing the various members of the relevant members, rather. Like I was going to say members of his family, but there's only one. But yeah, I mean it's. What's the first thing that's striking, and it's very sort of DreamWorks, is just the cadence and tone of his voice. He's very unique and just not what you would expect from Viking warrior prince or whatever. You know what I mean? So that immediately tells you a lot about like what the tonality of this is going to be like.
Yeah, no, it was a very strong narration, and I like how it kind of plays into like they said, the opening of the scene, how it describes everything and talks about it. It keeps it kind of narrative based, an actual narration of what's going on, as well as introducing the character as he moves through in and out of the scene, specifically on what he's talking about. They'll kind of take the voice and attach it to what's actually happening on screen, and then they'll remove it again when it pans away and shows you kind of the village at large. It was a nice little interactive. It was almost interactive in the way you felt it was happening before you. Like you were kind of separated from it, and then you zoomed in for a bit, and then you pulled back out again at the right times.
Yeah, and he's a very charming character. Like I mean, his name's Hiccup, which I had to turn on subtitles to see if I heard that right, because I thought it doesn't seem like for real.
Hiccup, Hiccup horrendous, I think. Horrendous Haddock. The third.
Okay. And I don't recall. Did they give a reason like for why he's named that, or is that just his name?
Vikings.
Like it could.
I think there's
Okay.
there's a lot of this of kind of shrug Vikings in these two films.
Yeah. But he's voiced by, I have the cast name up here, Jay Baruchel. I'm not exactly sure if I'm pronouncing the last name correctly or
I
not.
think that's
But
right.
his name, or I mean his voice is it's nasal, and he's just totally average guy, like, and it's so right for the character, and it makes moments that would not be all that funny hilarious, like when Craig Ferguson's character, the guy with like he's missing a hand, he's like
Gobber.
the Gobber, when he's telling him, you can't be, you got to stop all this.
You just
Yeah,
gestured
yeah.
to all of me. Yeah, it's the voice that
Right.
carries the delivery for those lines. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of my favorite parts where he's like, right, exactly, like that. You got to stop all that. You go, oh, you're
Yeah.
playing a dangerous game. Like,
Yes.
I mean, like as soon as that started, I thought, oh, this is gonna be like, I like this character already. This is gonna be fun. And that's
Yeah.
like about 2-3 minutes into the movie. So I go, all right, I'm already on board.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the line of dialogue that I thought, I like this character. He's fun.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely the first thing we've got to talk about. I mean, it's an extremely strong lead, particularly in film too, where he almost takes it takes the direction of a Luke Skywalker kind of field for me. The character is well developed. He's engaging. He's interesting, and as you said, he's funny, which I think is almost entirely down to the joint quality of writing and voice acting on that one. There's a lot that wouldn't have carried through if either one or were not up to par for any given moment. I really enjoyed it. And I very rarely enjoy leads. I'm much more of a kind of side character person. Personally.
I've noticed that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have noticed that.
Yeah,
like, in our past discussions.
but with Hiccup, he's definitely, if not the joint first of my favorites in character form.
Yeah, I would say. I was trying to think who's my favorite character, like whether or not he has any competition. There are characters. There's plenty of characters I enjoy, but he probably is my favorite character. And it's good because like it's his story. He's the lead.
Yeah, for me, you could kind of call Toothless a character, I guess, and that's one of the best things about the film. I mean, jumping over to him a bit for a moment, they very much make him a character in the animation.
Oh, absolutely,
he's so expressive and funny and dangerous still. They blend the qualities of what you would expect a dragon to be, slightly familiar in terms of the fact that they are animals and they're beasts, but they're also alien in the way they kind of bring that across to you on screen. He's kind of mix of dog, cat, and something not quite.
I'm glad you said that. I was thinking that the same. I was thinking that before we started, was I wanted to mention the fact that sometimes, because I have a black cat with green eyes, which I kind of got by accident. It's like the cat chose me. I didn't choose the cat.
Isn't that always the case?
Right? Yeah. But yeah, this and he's he's a black Night Fury. That's what they're called, right?
Night Furies. Yeah.
And he has very expressive green eyes, and sometimes the way he behaves, oftentimes very like a dog. A very playful dog. The way he moves, though, the way he very like a cat. It is like a blend of both.
Yeah, and then with that added sort of tint of not quite either, that kind of wraps it together and makes him very much believable as as a dragon, and not just it's a dog with wings or it's a cat with wings or whatever. I like how it carries that through without He does have a very distinct characteristic. Any given scene you can imagine in your head, and you'll know how he's going to respond to it. He's not just this background. I have to be cute now. I'll be cute. It very much bleeds into bleeds from scene to scene and flows as you would expect it to, and it does make him a character on screen for you, for the others to, which is important because the others have to interact with him. It can't just be this prop that they they can fly on him every now and then. He has to come across that way.
Absolutely. All this is I guess let's just stick on the characters for now, because I think that's sort of carrying us through this. One of the main points of the first one is sort of the conflict between Hiccup and his father, whose name I didn't catch the whole first movie, and it was said in the second movie a lot. I just saw, okay, Hiccup's dad, that's what he was to me in the first movie, but his name is Stoic.
Stoic the Vast.
The Vast, yeah. It's I couldn't tell what they were saying. There was so much. That's the great thing about the sound design. There's so much during these action scenes. They're very bombastic, and there's just so much going on that I missed his name in the middle of all that. But his character, as I was watching it the first time, I'm going, okay, it's this character again.
Yeah, precisely. It's the not listening dad. It's the disconnected parent.
And the thing is, he totally is that character. And for whatever reason, and we'll get into it, like for many reasons, maybe it works in this. He's because he has more than just that side to him. That he is that character. Don't get me wrong, but because there are scenes where it's just him talking with like his friend who's like his same age, and like they're talking about like how to relate to the kid or like what's wrong with them or whatever. You could tell that he is not just the chief who's like in charge of like whipping everyone. He is also Hiccup's dad. He does care about him. He's doing things wrong, but it's not.
It is a struggle. Is that kind of the drama is real and carried across through the character and through the lens of, like you said, the scenes of him and Gob are talking about it in the main hall, and then his own kind of semi-confrontations with his son. It's not just a case of, oh, he has to be here, he has to not care about or not listen to his son because otherwise there wouldn't be a plot. It is very much attached to the growth of both characters respectively. It isn't just for the sake of plot, I think, is the main thing, because that's what that character is so often used for. It's just I have to be an obstacle for my son's coming of age story, or it's just that's when it becomes really boring. Here it is that, you're right, but it's also part of an arc that there's to be seen independent of the film's plot itself.
There's enough going on that he's not just that. He is that, but he's not just that. And again, very well voiced this time by Gerard Butler or Jared, like however he would say it. But yeah, I like those moments, and it's sort of weird because they're like the only two people in the whole movie, I think, that have like Scottish accents.
The parents, whose voice the parents definitely seem to lean towards more the Scottish, and then the kids to be more personable or whatever, or relatable, whatever that means. Are more
everyone else
accents.
is just American. I guess now is as good a time as any to mention like the other characters, just because I know that you don't particularly care for his, I don't know, merry band. Followers.
Yeah, Astrid is my joint favorite, but apart from her, because she's an actual character, but apart from the other which we'll get to in a second, the rest are just comic relief background, fluff. Which in the first film is it's like Fish Legs, Not Loud, Tough Nut, and Rough Nut.
Who's what? Okay, Rough Nut and Tough Nut are clearly the twins.
Yeah.
Who are the other ones?
Snotlout is the kid with black hair.
Okay, he looks like Jack Black. Yeah, but is voiced by Jonah Hill.
Yeah, and then you got Fish Legs for the nerd guy who knows
Fish
all the
Legs.
stats.
I'm never gonna remember that guy's name. Sorry, Fish Legs.
But I just don't care about any of them. They're very unoffensive comic relief background characters in the first film, and they come a little bit more into the foreground in an irritating way for me in the second one. But beyond that, they could literally just be deleted from the films, and I would not care either way.
There are moments where, like toward the end of this movie, they're actually helpful and they're doing stuff, and they're succeeding. They're not like just getting in the way or
I can't miss.
I mean,
bonk.
Yeah, he's actually the one that I come closest to liking, even though I don't remember his name, but the one that looks like Jack Black, you know what I'm talking about? I don't know that he's an enjoyable character, but he does a few things that are at least helpful. And there are moments where like I laughed at something he said. I remember there's a time when they're actually training and like he threw something like an axe and totally missed. The sun was in my eye.
What am I supposed to do about that?
So he had good comedic timing, but Jonah Hill always does that. But yeah, like the twins, they're a bit much. Sorry, there's a motorcycle going by. It doesn't help. It's really funny to me how hilariously ugly everybody is in this movie. They just look so. Aside from like the main character,
well, even the main characters, they're slightly.
He's sort of dorky, and weird, but not like the twins are just so vile looking. You know what I mean?
It's very kind of Viking. They kind of dial it up to 10 and then dial it back again to normal, depending on the necessity of the relatability for the character, which is always the case with Hollywood stars.
They look like their collective IQ, which is not so good. You know what I mean? And that's the thing with them. But I mean, and I don't. We didn't really talk too much about Gobber, but he's a very funny. I laughed at pretty much everything. Like anytime you were supposed to laugh, I found the comedy very effective with him. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yeah. There were times when it could have been placed a bit better for me, but I still found it funny, in the vacuum
Yeah.
for what it was. I would have just moved it occasionally, left or right, depending on the scene. But yeah, very funny character. With his own emotion attached to him, mostly in the second
Yes.
film, of course. But he's not just the comic relief. You can see. Aside from the fact that he's also the mentor character in the first film, he's also connected to Stoic, to the chief. He's an advisor, and in the friendship role for him, which he just kind of he bounces off everyone basically.
I was gonna say he's kind of like sort of the Hagrid of this squad. You know what I mean? Like in the sense that he is a teacher or a mentor, but sort of something in between. Like he can relate to them and all that, but he doesn't quite have like the status or the doesn't comport himself like I'm the leader, like he doesn't have too many errors about him, which is, I mean, you can't have a Craig Ferguson like character that he is kind of just Craig Ferguson, like, you know what I mean, like as a Viking. But yeah, his comedy I thought worked very well. The movie doesn't fail at comedy. It's just comedy is subjective, and sometimes it works for everyone, and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that's pretty much. We haven't talked about Astrid though. Do you want to talk about her before we move?
Joint favorite for me. These two are just brilliant, bouncing off each other, working by themselves. The characters, I really enjoy both Astrid and Hiccup in these films. I think it's mostly down to the fact that their dialogue is written so beautifully naturally. You very rarely see that between, specifically romance characters. You very rarely get that. The first film was a lot more kind of cookie cutter formula based, but the second one really amped up the quality on that for me.
I was going to say,
one of my favorite parts of the films.
I was going to say I didn't find her all that engaging until the second one. The second one, I thought she was, and it's not that she was bad in the first one. It's just for the first 2/3 of it, let's say, we were doing the standard, I don't like you, I'm popular and you're not, whatever that dynamic is. Oh wait, you're not so bad, hey, maybe I'll get to know you after all. That kind of thing that has been in like everything ever.
And then the getting to know you was really quick as well. It was like a case, which was impactful and made sense, but it was still a case of, oh, this has happened like a flicking a switch, which which is
and
just cookie cutter.
As far as I can remember, she didn't exactly do anything important in the movie.
Film one, she basically kind of talks Hiccup into taking action again, with the whole, you must feel pretty terrible right now, but apart from that, that's right. She's just the warrior.
That's kind of what I mean. It's like, that's all she kind of did. But like in the second one, I thought she was, that's one of the things about the second one I enjoy more than the first one, is her, and her relationship with him. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of the characters. Talking about the actual movie itself, like what's you stand out. What stands out to you about this movie, like above other animated works or even just movies in general? Like, what is it that kept you coming back to this one, or that made you fall in love?
We're focusing on the first one first, as we are, and we'll move on to the characters that come up into the second one as well when we get to that part. But as the first film, I like how complete a package it is. It's in many ways very simple. Like it's not doing anything. It's one of the things I prefer about the second one, actually, and despite the flaws that come out as a result, it's not really reaching for the stars in the kind of scope of the story. Its presentation of what it is telling is fantastic and amazing. I think it's one of the strongest things about these films that makes them so charming is, the animation, the music, the art design, everything is coming, is popping on screen, and you're just loving it, no matter how simple the story frame is around it. It's just it takes what it's trying to do, as basic as that is, and it makes it work, really, really damn well. The simple things like the flights, flight with Toothless, both of them, for me, were just breathtaking. You can see, and that's one of the main reasons I wanted so desperately to see the second one in the film twice. Because the music and the scale of the screen, obviously with the clouds around you, and it really is. It was breathtaking in how they presented it.
It is, absolutely.
And it's one of those things that just stands out from the film, no matter how long ago you saw it. You'll remember those scenes for how well they did it. And it doesn't have to be this grand scale story for the first film, because it's not. It's the origin. It's just the introduction of the characters, which they do pretty well. The relationship between Hiccup and Toothless is absolutely astounding. The motion, well, not the motion work, because it wasn't a real creature, but the execution of the motion of Toothless and how that gave him a character, and for Toothless, for Hiccup to bounce off of was brilliant.
Yeah, I you mentioned the music, and in the first one for me, like that's absolutely I love the music, and I just looked up. It was done by John Powell. I'm not even sure who that is. Like I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with his other credits. You ever heard of him?
I've definitely heard of him, but for the shame, I can't remember what he's done. He's
Okay,
definitely
well,
he's a big hitter though, as far as I recall.
I'll have to research his other stuff because the music, that sort of swelling, just orchestral, just that music that plays when they're flying, like that sounds like flight.
Oh
Like
yeah.
to me, like that, that, and that, which I'll just mention it right now because like we're primarily focusing on the first one, but because this is the topic right now, in the second one, the one thing I dislike is that song, like with lyrics that's playing like when they first start flying around, like when he's like bonding with Toothless up in the sky and he reveals that he can fly too, like
Yeah.
like the suit. I love the scene. I hate that song that's playing. I don't know who sang that song. I don't hate them personally. It's just not my cup of tea.
See, I love that. I love that intro to the film and as the outro. I've really enjoyed that particular piece. That's obviously a subjective thing that's hindered that for you.
Like you are free to be wrong. Like you are subjective here. Like I thought that wrecked it. Like no, I'm just kidding. Like I mean I'm not kidding about the fact that I hate it, but you're free to like whatever you like, of course.
Yeah.
But no, that just did not. It was nowhere near as engaging to me as just the instrumental, just symphony that was going on. Like in so many scenes in the first one, because there's 3 or 4 scenes I would say that like that music really helps carry it. And it's not even just like the overly dramatic parts when like he's doing something like almost about to crash or fall or whatever. It's just like when times are good, like it's just like nice swelling in your heart feel. I love that music. And what I didn't realize was going to happen was that I thought I didn't really have too many thoughts about the way that the story was going to go in the first one, but the fact that he was getting to know a dragon that he'd actually shot down. That was interesting because I don't really know. Like I said, I didn't have any preconceived notion of how they would come together. But he did succeed in taking this thing down.
Yeah.
And it was flying around perfectly fine, before that its tail got damaged when he brought it down. So that was interesting. That was like an interesting dynamic that I didn't see coming, was that he was effectively going to not just have to bond with the thing, but also repair it, heal it, nurse it, and sort of become half of it. They sort of complete each other,
Yeah, especially with the tail end of it and moving to the second film, when of course it's been mirrored in his own disability from the crash. I like how it's not hammered in and thrown in your face in how it's presented, but I like how that kind of bond represents the kind of microcosm of the argument per se that is trying to be pushed across in the film, of how the Vikings and dragons, who have been at war for years, centuries even, have to now come together and become one as a society. It's not that pair isn't they're obviously the driving impetus of that, but they're not. The story isn't focusing and saying, look at this message, you have to bond, you have to be nice, this is what you can do.
Good point.
It doesn't drive it in, but it's there. You can look at it and go, yes, this is exactly what's represented in that greater whole, and I enjoy it for that. It's there are a lot of things that this film does, it's kind of subtly in the background, and that doesn't just throw it down your throat by force.
Yeah, it is. It's like you said, that it is there. Like there's a scene that comes up where after sort of Hiccup's dad, Stoic, I have to. he does have a name. He brings up the point that like they've killed hundreds of us. We've killed thousands of them, and they're only doing it because blah. We'll get to the plot point later. But yeah, up until that scene, I don't think that they really do mention what's going on. Like you just accept that this is what's going on, and of course, it seems. You see like both sides of it, like even without the dragons being able to talk. I mean, it's summed up real well there with just like that back and forth. Like that's why like the argument, that's why this is going on. That's why the conflict is not solved. It's not like you can really like have a dialogue with the dragons, like you know what I mean. Even Hiccup didn't really do that. It's just he got to know one, and that was enough to shatter the illusion of what these things were supposedly what he was taught that they were. You know what I mean. But yeah, I mean, and that scene, what I like that it wasn't one scene, like we're friends now. It was like it was a part of the movie. You know, like, it was a sequence in the movie where they linked in what he was learning from class, you know, from dragon hunting class or whatever it was called,
Dragon
training, and applying that to trying to get closer to Toothless, and also taking what he learned from Toothless's behavior and those interactions and using it to succeed in training. Like that was, I like that was not just okay, so now I understand you and now we're bonded and now we can do everything together. It's like they took a while
it's
to
an actual
get to know each
sequence,
other.
and it's not just a montage as well. It is obviously largely focused on that, but it's almost 3 independent sequences that have been kind of meshed and blended together to the point where they feel like one extended kind of section of the film. They don't. You're right. They don't just focus it on a single point and just say, "Oh, look, you gave him a fish and he gave you one back, and now you're friends." It was just that was the first step, and I like how that was visually represented with him leaping to the other side of the lake and having it be a case of, you know, there's still so far to go. There's still much they can learn from one another, and also not only pairing that with his success in dragon training and the kind of waves he's making with the society. But also the fact that he is making gradual progress with Toothless in terms of repairing, you know, the tail feather, wing, flap, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, even the first time that Toothless takes off for flight, he tries to get rid of him. He's like, I can fly now. Like, I'm done here. But like he you know, it becomes clear that he can't actually fly without a rider. Yeah. You know, but it's not like even they've bonded up to that point to a degree, but not to the point that the dragon's like, yeah, I guess I'm your pet now. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's very natural, you know, in the sense that that wasn't the end of it. There's like no easy, didn't cut that many corners is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You know,
and time is clearly passing as well. This isn't just taking the, you know, space over a single day. At least weeks have passed during this. Sure. Helped by the fact that there's a voyage going on. Even though time gets a little bit bent with the whole travelling speeds later on in the films, at least at this part of the film, Stoick's voyage is clearly meant to have taken a long time. So when he gets back and that kind of milestone is set, we know that there has been a reasonable amount of time dedicated to just the kind of bonding of these two, as well as his development in training as well, you know, because he's taking what he's learned to demonstrate in the arena. Which is more like part of his own experimentation as well. He doesn't actually care about succeeding at the training, which I like. He's just experimenting for the sake of, I have a theory, let me test it with this other dragon. You know, these various different types so that I know it's not just Toothless.
Yeah. And I do want to say, this is like a complete, like random thing. I like that particular time when he scared the two-headed variety, whose name I don't know.
Something, I can remember. But with the one with the eel.
Because they're like, and I don't know why this is a thing, and I've certainly never done this myself, but I've seen on YouTube, apparently cats are afraid of cucumbers if you put them on the floor.
I'm pretty sure that's a myth.
I've seen videos of it.
But I'm pretty sure it's like the fact that they're just being startled rather than they're actually seeing a cucumber. It's more a case of you put anything down suddenly long and... I don't know.
That seems weird. It seems weird. Like I've seen like there was like a reel of like 20-something videos. It's like this many. I mean, for them to fake that, it just seemed because they don't just like get startled. They like jump into the air like away from it. Like they think it's like a deadly predator or something. Like I just thought maybe they thought they were snakes. But that's kind of like what it reminded me of. That scene, weird tangent over. I apologize for that.
But no, I do like that moment though. It was one of the more impactful in my head of like, oh look, you know, clearly you don't like these things. Let me just pop that down. It kind of fit the whole. He was warding him back into the cage rather than just, you know, making them roll over and stroking their belly, and that's a lot less fitting for the kind of training scenario he's in. At that point, he almost wasn't even bothering to try and hide how familiar he was.
Yeah, and it kind of comes off like he's some kind of dragon whisperer, you know, like, and they all start. That's why he gets his notoriety within the villages. They're all taken by his ability to commune with the beasts. The beasts, yeah. And he's really kind of a fraud, you know. Like, I mean, he is doing it. But I like that he really is accomplishing something, and at the same time, from the perspective of what they're perceiving of it, he's a fraud, you know.
It could have been so easily played off as another liar's reveal moment, and I hate those because they're so overdone. They take so much time out of the story, but that doesn't take place here.
That's the thing, is like I don't really hate cliches. Like I've said many times that things become cliche for a reason. It's just, but you do get tired of some of them, and especially when they're executed poorly. And this movie it's got some cliches. It's got like a lot, but I mean, Stoick as a character could have easily been a cliche.
Yeah.
but everything's just executed so well that I don't care about that at all. And the dragons themselves, I like that they establish their different rules for like different dragons.
Different
some
number of shots they
fire
can fire,
blasts.
different kind of way methods they use their fire, different kind of like needle spray attacks and such. Yeah, they have their own little nuances that they have to learn. I mean, even just the scene where you have the real montage where it's slamming through the book. Very dangerous kill on sight. Very dangerous kill on sight. Learning all the little tips and tricks for different varieties of them. It was very. It bigged up the kind of danger of the creatures and why this Viking society is so scared of them, because it does make sense that they treat them like beasts, because from their perspective they are. It's not like this is the Vikings were wrong all along. It was a case of they kind of weren't. It just kind of depends on how you deal with them.
Right.
It was their approach rather than their actual perspective that was wrong.
And I like the there was something that was tacked onto that. I just lost it. What was it? You mentioned something that
dangerous.
What did you say?
Montage book.
Book.
Yeah.
Book. I like the setup there. That he's shot down the one kind of dragon that nobody's ever been able to analyze. So he does have to do all this by theory, like you mentioned before, like experiment wise. He just got to take what he learns from class and try to apply it, or when a question comes up there, like down to like a dragon will always take the kill shot, like if it can. It's like, well, it didn't, like why not? You know what I mean? Or they must be wrong about this. I like that mystery, that he doesn't really, like, they have a name for this legendary thing, this night fury, but they really know nothing about it, at all. I thought that's well set up, especially the first time you're watching this, that you're getting into like the mythology of it, which it sounds like sort of a pretentious, lofty way to describe it, but that is what every world needs to do. Like in a fantasy setting, it needs to set that stuff up for you if you want to get invested.
Yeah, absolutely. And the presentation of the montage itself, with the sound treatment and the music and the setting. He was in the Great Hall where he's facing a lot of adversity with the training companions, and they've all left, and you're in this dark hall with shadows. Heavy book on storm going on outside. It all just really lent itself to what it was trying to get across in the message. And when it is the first time you've watched it, you know that this isn't proven wrong yet. These are dangerous creatures that he could be, getting into trouble with, and yet when you come back to it after the fact, it hasn't lost any of the impact because of the quality of the execution. It's not reliant completely on the fact that it is a mystery to you at this point. It has its own enjoyable quality regardless of viewing numbers.
Yes, and I really like that Hiccup does not do anything that no one else in the village could do. It's just he's the only one inclined to do it. You know what I mean? That's I like those kind of characters, and it's like a very I like that quiet brand of hero. You know what I mean? Or heroism.
Yeah, the kind
of
the subdued.
He doesn't, aside from maybe his sort of mechanical prowess, because he's been like a blacksmith's apprentice, he doesn't really have any skills that none of the others do. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing all that unique about him. Yeah, like they could easily do this.
He is just got that kind of hero's core to him that allows him to blend with his I keep saying blend.
You keep saying blend.
It needs to be a word. It needs to be a word.
Just make it a word. Just make it a word, Miriam.
I'm going to say blend from now on. I'm going to be Shakespeare. No, but yeah, blend with his knowledge of like the mechanical, and it's his progress as a character and through the story in the narrative itself is tied to who he is, and it's believable. It's not just a case of he could be anyone and he happens to be stumbling across. He is making these developments himself, and as a character you buy that. So yes, you're right. It's a subdued and quiet kind of trait, and I definitely agree with you on that kind of character being appealing. It's one of my favourite types as well. Probably why he's a favourite lead of mine, despite the fact that so often they're not, because they tend to be the kind of big, bold, brash, classical heroic types that he isn't, and yet he's fulfilling that role in his own way. He's bringing his own all this to the society. And that's the lesson that's being learned. There are lots of individual kind of morals of the story being told independently, but in simultaneous situ. They're not being hammered over your face. They're just there, and you can appreciate them or you can ignore them. They're tied so heavily into the characters and the background plots that it's just a well-woven fabric, if you know what I mean. You know, tapestry has been well put together. Even it's a simple tapestry, and it's in a lot of ways, like you said, with the cliches and the kind of cookie cutter format. It's very basic, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, not to get into it at all, but like Coco is a very simple story. But that's what I mean. It's like when it's like a simple thing done extremely well is like still great. You know what I mean? And he's this, this character, Hiccup he's simple, but like there's like everything is executed so well that like it's like the sum being greater than its parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In individual moments with the characters, kind of become part of them of the whole that you view them as. Like with certain characters, you can identify their key traits and put them in various different situations, and that won't change the overall kind of perception of the character. With this story, because of the simple, basic kind of core they've gone with, every time they go through this new kind of scene or this moment or this lesson they're learning, it kind of adds to what you've already picked up. Snowball effect kind of thing. And it's just his character works so well for that type of progress. As does all of the characters, really. Stoic, Astrid, Val, obviously in the second film. They just it all works.
Yeah, I think we'll use this as like a segue into that scene when Stoic comes back and hears of his son's success. Then, like that scene where he sort of he like Hiccup thinks he's busted. Is like, you thought you could hide a dragon from me or what, or whatever. And then it's like, but it's like, oh, I'm proud of you because blah blah blah, and they have that moment, and this will come up in the second one, where they reference his mother like for the first time. I think it's the first time they mention it in the movie.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But yeah, where like, in the idea that. I mean, maybe this wasn't supposed to be a crass joke, but I was expecting her to be as big as a person as he was because they were wearing her breastplates, which I know a breastplate, right? But I because of the shape and like the like it's clearly supposed to be.
That was
like,
definitely the intention. For the second film, they'd already gone for a different character design by that point with the second one, and they thought, I don't care about the joke, we're just going to go with this.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a continuity error there. But yeah, it's a funny joke.
That was something that only occurred to me as like after I saw the second. When I go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But
that was definitely a common thread. A lot of people made a comment on that one. But I love that scene, just independent of that and the humor involved, because it is such a powerful and yet simple moment between the two. Like, this is the because Stoic's flaw at this point is that he's not connecting properly with his son, and that he's often dismissive because of his own perceptions, because of the duty he has as chief and how he needs to pass it on to his son. It's got a lot of stress attached to this that kind of allows the viewer to forgive him for his sins, as it were, a lot easier than you would the other kind of character that this is so often played as. But with this moment, you see the enthusiasm and the want to, he's like, oh, finally, we have something we can talk about. And he sits down and he moves the chair closer and he leans in and he looks like, come on. And he kind of takes a moment and he, come on. And it's like, he wants to bond with his son, and that is so touching. I mean, that is one
very genuine.
Yeah, it's genuine. It's and relatable. I mean, who doesn't want to bond with their parents or children, respectively? That is a very simple, powerful, emotional beat to hit, and they nailed it in that scene.
And I think that's like, it's not the first hint that he's a person. He's been a person in other scenes in the movie, but that's why I think, I like this guy, even though he's got issues. Like, he's not like I'm the mean dad who wields power and authority. Like he's a person.
Yeah. And when that comes up later, and almost really, it was the scene when he's berating Hiccup later on, bouncing off from this scene. This is what kind of lends that weight. This scene is what builds that one up to be so heavy a blow to the viewer and the characters, because they've you see that these two do have a bond and they care about each other. They just don't have that personal connection. So when he kind of strikes him down and then just says, "You are not my son," and walks out, and the best part about that scene that caps off the character for me is when he then and he kind of stumbles. He literally takes an inhalation of breath and sort of stumbles for a second. It's like, oh my god, the weight of what I've just done is like, but my duty has to be first and foremost to the people, and then moves on. It's the chief in him that's getting in the way of the character, of the bonding with his son, who isn't that character yet. And I like that these scenes that we're talking about now are what feed into the kind of ultimate resolution of their bond. It's the fact that Hiccup's traits prove that he will have the potential to be chief one day, and that gets around his duty problem, and that kind of brings them together as people. Not completely resolved, because there are issues in the second film still, as we see, but you get to that kind of place where they can take a joint step forward together, and it's so satisfying.
Yeah, they make a lot of progress, exactly. And I guess now's as good a time as any to sort of bring up the plot, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It's around this point that that Hiccup, he achieves so much degree of success in his training that he is chosen to sort of be the dragon slayer, and he's like, I can't do that. I'm about to skip town. I'm gonna go, and that's when Astrid sort of crashes, his party more or less, like while he's trying to take off with Toothless, and she sort of figures out what's going on. And it's a beautiful scene where the two of them get to appreciate one another, and just the visuals and the music and everything of flying around everywhere. You know what I mean?
Quick note. I love the fact that when her wall finally comes down is when she sees home flying through the sky. I really appreciate that. That's the moment when she kind of goes, okay, leaning in, I could appreciate this moment for its majesty, and it's her appreciation of home that he doesn't quite have, even in the second film to start with. He's like looking beyond the horizon. She's very much comfortable with where she's come from. I just like that
nice
little
point.
bit.
Yeah. I thought they were going to make her chief. For the second one. Like, I thought that was going to be where that was going because of that sort of talk that they have in the beginning. But that's another movie. We'll get to that one soon. But yeah, so but anyway, while they're on this, flying magic carpet ride, they discover the dragon nest. Is that what they call it?
Yes, yeah. The nest for the queen that's currently in the cave that all of the other dragons are basically feeding. It's why they've been hammering up the quota on picking up the Vikings' food. I like the line when it's like, it's so satisfying to know all of our food is being dropped into a pit.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
And it's it's well. I like everything about this scene, but it's at the same time, it's like I feel like I've seen this and other stuff, but it's fine. Like this is like we're getting time for like a climax. We need like a climax. What's it going to be? Well, we're going to fight a big dragon. Like that's basically, you could sort of foresee that. But I'm not too sure exactly. It's like it only controls the dragons when it's hungry, I suppose.
I don't know. I mean, this to me, this part of the film is where. Well, not necessarily the section of the film, but this material, the stuff when it's dealing with the ultimate climax and threat, is when it just becomes, it's action scene. Nothing particularly stands out to me. It's all well done, but all of the kind of enjoyable moments for the film for me are in the characters and the moments before that in the film. It's
weird because I don't want to say that this is like when it stops being interesting because I don't know what else they could have done, but this is when it stops being unique. You know what I mean? I guess is a better way of saying that.
It becomes that the formula starts to show here. This is where when you're not having unique, nuanced character moments, you're just having dragons fighting other dragons in a big action sequence. You like I say, you've seen that before. There's not much you could do with that to make it engaging without having already built up much stronger characters to interact off in the sequences themselves. And they don't have time to do that for this film yet.
Yeah.
It's something I look forward to for the third film. I'm hoping they really hammer in those moments because I'm expecting to be disappointed with film 3 after 1 and 2, but I'm hoping very much that they're going to knock it out of the park.
One can only hope. But there's not a whole hell of a lot left to cover in this particular movie, but we have our big, we have the moment where like the truth comes out, like Hiccup's been bonding with this dragon and not become the ultimate dragon tamer or slayer or whatever. And it's, as you said, that this moment can be very overdone. The entire movie can be building up to this point and be like sort of about this point, and it's not. It's really only a very small chunk of the movie takes up its time with this, maybe about a collective of like 6 minutes tops, But this is sort of like where the characters start going down down the different directions, down their various roads toward the climax, because. If you've seen the movie, we don't need to tell you what happened, of course. But all points sort of converge at that nest. And, Hiccup's there with like his friends, would have become his friends. And he's taught them, like what they need to know to ride their own dragons, which I like. I do like that. Like whether or not like their characters appeal to you, I enjoy that they actually were of use in this. I don't know so much exactly what the fat guy that did. I don't think he did anything.
I think he's knock together some stats for the dragon? Get blind spot, no blind spot, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he pointed out a few things maybe, but like the other ones were more useful. But I will say, I love how just it's sort of intense, but not. I wasn't exactly afraid, for anybody in particular during this sequence, but I liked how intense it was and how dynamic they were with the various camera, angles. I really loved the moment. I think it's after they save Astrid from falling and they drop her off and they go way high into like the air, and he notices that the mother or queen has wings and he wants to draw it into the sky, and they like charge down there and like shoot it. Like that's a really intense just shot, and like the way that the music works, the way that the camera angle like being like right like on them, like as they're following, you see it sort of, even though it's not first person, like from his eyes, like you see it from their perspective sense. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And this hasn't come up before, but I really love the noise that Night Furies make when they fire. I love that.
That high pitched kind of whine. That it's very very
that was
satisfying.
Really cool. Yeah,
the flapping of the wings. The sound design for the dragons, full stop, is amazing. Everything about the kind of dynamic motion and impacts that they have to sell in each individual moment in these sequences is very much powerful and very definitely delivers. You talked about intense moments and the kind of pacing of that sequence. One of my favorite parts is Stoic actually approaching the break in the cave. Makes no sense that they fire a flaming rock after him, and he's like, "Oh, do you really want to stand there?" But the actual angles of it, and when he's engaging the dragons,
I just read that as I'm a badass.
Yeah, precisely. It's like that was the moment where I was like,
okay. That would never happen, of course. Yeah, but this is the perpetual argument where you have to bring realism into it.
Precisely. But at the same time, the immediate aftermath of that, when the dragons are flying past, and then he immediately is like, "This isn't over," and he's like looking back and like, prepare yourself. I like the kind of intense focus he's got, and you see the chief in him perpetually throughout these sequences, and that helps sell everything that's come previous. Because if he wasn't taking this as seriously as he is, the weight of everything he's said up to this point wouldn't hold water.
That comes up again in the second one. I don't know how well it pays off for me, but yeah, when the bad guy of the second one is mentioned, the way that
is that
I love the build up to that character. So yeah, I guess we're toward the end of this. How do we want to wrap this up so that we can move toward the second one?
I don't know. I mean,
this is kind of just. I mean, the moment, I don't want to not talk about it, but it's like the end of it is very touching, of course, and it's like in a way that I don't think needs to be. I don't think I can add much to it. Like if you watch that and you process it and you're not moved by it, may I suggest counseling?
Yeah, the two twin moments. The twin moments. The moments where obviously we're still kind of registering. Oh God, I did this, and he's leaning down. He's like, and he's looking at the dragon and Toothless, and he's like processing what he's lost that moment. He has to go through some rough stuff. Stoic does in these films. That obviously by itself is very powerful, but you also know he's going to survive. So that's not as impactful as it could have been, but. What we do get is a bit of consequence in the form of, and also character development in the form of the leg being lost, or at least the lower leg.
Yes.
Which we then get thankfully delivered in the next scene, because it's the simplicity and natural delivery of the next scene where he gets out of bed and he's like he almost. Obviously that he's going to register it. On a second viewing, for example, what's about to happen, but you can trace each kind of thought process. He's like, let me get out of bed, and he's like, what's that? And looks down, and it's like, you feel him kind of take it in and feel that blow, but it fits the way he does process that. It fits him as a character. It fits. He's being practical. He's being okay. It's this. This is part of what I have had to do. I don't regret this. And he's like, but then he's like, okay, let me try. Everything about it is just so well done that it kind of perfectly encapsulates the film as a whole. It's very simple, it's very basic, it's to an extent formulaic, but every part of it is done so well that and with a very slight unique spin to it, that you just breathe it in, and it works really well for me. Yeah,
I mean it's highly just the quiet nature of it, the private moment there. Like it's literally like this was following like a scene where they're flying around like a gigantic dragon, like the biggest ever, up in the sky. you do need that moment just to process what's going on, and I like that he's doing that. That he's just in his head for a minute, like as anyone would need to be, and there's like there's nothing corny about it.
Yeah,
that scene has happened before many times, but again, when it's well done, I don't care. And I didn't see it coming. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like it wasn't. Yes, it's it follows. It's natural, like whatever. But I mean, there's nothing that was overly predictable about the moment. It's not all that creative, but it's perfectly executed, and you didn't know it was going to happen before it happened. And
it's another one of those kind of kernels within the story that has happened in real life. This has happened to countless people, and so you don't need to attach flair. You don't need to big up the drama. Just let the moment breathe. Let it be a natural and real thing that just is in front of you, and the beauty and kind of loss of that moment is just so natural as a result. The natural nature of it, and in this and so many of the moments throughout this and the second film, is what makes me love this series so much. Not the dragons, not the great music or the epic battles. It's just the way they bring moments to life in a very believable way. It's not something every film can do, and I really appreciate it for how it does it so well.
I agree. So that's kind of wrapping up our thoughts on the first one. Is there anything in particular you want to mention?
Not really. No.
I'm gonna call like a brief intermission here because I got to use the restroom, and then we'll be back in a minute to talk about our thoughts on the second movie. We'll be back in a minute to talk about our thoughts on the second movie.
Looking forward to it.